So you all could copy this as we're going along, right? Right. So we have the grass, which is consumed or eaten by the rabbit, which is consumed or eaten by the snake, which is consumed or eaten by the eagle. So the categories would be the grass would be the primary producer, rabbit, primary consumer, snake, secondary consumer, and the eagle, tertiary consumer. So now, if we label each of these positions in the food chain, 1, 2, 3, 4. We call these positions here in which the organism occupies in the food chain its trophic level. A trophic level is the position at which an organism is occupying in the food chain. Right. So, guys, you all with me so far? We're taking it step by step, bringing together all what we learned already, and we're bringing it here. Primary producer, consumed by the primary consumer, consumed by the secondary consumer, consumed by the tertiary consumer. Just as a reminder, the head of the arrow would point in the direction of the flow of energy. The head of the arrow would also be by the one doing the consuming, right? So always remember that, because typically you might get almost a whole mark for the correct direction of the arrows, right? So a lot of times students would do the food chain correctly, but they would have the arrows in the wrong direction. So we number them 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is called the trophic levels. So now we remember this is ecology, study of the environment. So if we want to study the environment is science, so obviously we're gonna have some way in which we look at numbers, so we could actually analyze and get data and investigate and have it down, so we could have a better idea when we are studying. So what would happen now with ecological pyramids? We look at a food chain for a particular food chain for an environment, and we get some information on them. So the first one that we would look at is called a pyramid of numbers. Numbers. Right. So essentially now in a pyramid of numbers, if we're looking at one particular habitat or ecosystem, we would basically look at only what is taking place there. So think about if we're doing a study in our country, would we go Barbados and get information?
No, sir.
No, it does make sense because we want to know what is taking place in Trinidad. So, in when we are looking at these ecological pyramids, we only look at that habitat which houses this particular food chain at a time. So, how are we going to do this now? In the habitat, we look at each trophic level and we get information on each trophic level. So if we say it's a pyramid of numbers, what information do you think we would need to gather for each trophic level? Pyramid of numbers. So like this here, what kind of
Can you
numbers?
excuse me for a moment?
Pardon?
Can you excuse me for a moment?
Yeah, sure. Jaden or Eden, what kind of numbers could we gather for a food chain like this?
So what do you mean by that?
Okay, so if we know that in a habitat or ecosystem, the rabbit eats the grass, the snake eats the rabbit, the eagle eats the snake. Is it going to be one rabbit in that habitat? Is it going to be one snake that is going to eat that one rabbit? Is it one eagle is going to eat that one snake? Is it like that? In
No,
reality?
sir.
No, we are going to have a different what?
Numbers.
Numbers. So we could analyze and get information from numbers, not so?
Yes, sir.
Right. So what we could do, it's a gigantic task, but if we're looking at a specific habitat, we could go and actually count the number of primary producers. When you go on to sampling techniques, you would see in a way in which you could do that for things like grass and stuff, calculate. You do actually need to go and count individual ones. There's using simple mathematics. So you could count the number of the primary producer. So in this case, we'd be looking at grass. Would we go and count coconut tree and all kind of thing? You done? If this is the food chain we are studying, would we, even though a coconut tree is a producer, would we count it in this study?
No, sir.
No. So we count grass. We count the number of rabbits in there. We count the number of snakes in there. And we count the number of eagles in there. So we actually have numbers. And when we have numbers, we could draw up a table. We could present it in a form where we could analyze it like mathematics, not so?
So I have a question.
Sure.
Do you also count the grass?
Yeah, that's we're looking at each trophic level. So as I say, so when you go like in Form 4, Form 5 biology, you would see we have something called a quadrat, which is basically a meter square, but we usually use a quarter of that. And you basically could do random, you basically throw it to a random spot, a few random spots, and you count the number of that and you could get an average. And then you could calculate. So like if you could calculate how much surface area, right? So let me just draw something here. If we have a field which is big like that, and we know the dimensions, and if it is evenly distributed, so think about like a play field with a lawn or something. If we could measure and count the number of grass in one spot like that, wouldn't we, by using mathematics, be able to have an estimate of the area. So we would use that information and basically have an estimate of how much grass we would have in the entire field. Does that sound realistic? Jada?
Yes, sir.
Right. So we basically using a small part and we would calculate and get an estimated value for the whole thing.
Yes,
Right?
sir.
Right. So think about it in a simple way like this. We're going to have a class lunch. We order in KFC. If I eat 2 pieces of chicken here and we have 10 people in class, that means how many pieces of chicken we might need to order.
20.
Right. So it's the same principle. We have an idea for how much for one portion. We just, when we get that number, we calculate for the whole thing. Sounds simpler now?
Yes, sir.
Right. Aidan?
Yes, sir.
Right. All right. So, right. So we have the pyramid of numbers here. We have the pyramid, so we have the trophic levels. We take the numbers. So if now we go to do a table, and if we go to draw a table now, trophic number, organism, and the number. What are we going to put here using this information? Trophic level 1 is,
Grass.
right, grass. Aidan?
So trophic number, so the organism for trophic level 2 would be rabbit.
Rabbit, very good. Then we would have the snake, and then the eagle. So what would take place now, we would actually count, remember we said we would count the numbers. So if you get a number now, so we're using arbitrary numbers here, right? So if we have like 10,000 grass, so we're looking at individual plant, right? Rabbits, if we have about how many rabbits we could average, about 80, say about 800, so because it's a big area. Snakes, about 90. Do we expect the numbers to increase or decrease for these types of organisms?
So it could increase and decrease at the same time.
It could increase, but typically on an average, would you be able to see more eagle than grass or more eagle than rabbits in a ecosystem when you think about it?
No, sir.
No. So this is typically what we should expect. But think about now, if we're going to represent this now, and remember, you all could do graphs, right? You all should be able to do a graph. You all did a graph already, how to draw a graph?
Yes, sir.
Right? So if we do a graph now, right? So our X and Y axis, and we put our trophic levels. And we start from the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're using these here. So what we do, instead of using one-sided graph, you know how you could center justify in a Word document?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Right. So it comes like that. So the graph would be the middle would be here. So if we do a representation, what number we would put here for this trophic level?
10,000.
Right, 10,000, because it's the numbers we are looking at. So trophic level was the grass. Second level would be 100. That would be the rabbit. Then we have the snake, and then the eagle. Right. So if you notice now, what general shape did we form here?
A triangle.
A triangle. So, and what did we use to form this shape? What information or data we use to construct this?
So can you repeat that?
What numbers did we use to construct this graph to get the size of each trophic level?
We use a trophic number, the numbers from the organisms in the ecosystem.
Very good. So we use the numbers of each trophic level to get that. So this here is called the pyramid of numbers. So this is the first ecological pyramid. All right. So let's why are you doing that? Right. So let's write now. A pyramid of numbers show the number of each organism at each trophic level in a specific food chain. Typically, it would have a triangle shape with larger numbers at the lower trophic levels. So let's copy the table down and then the pyramid of numbers. You all would let me know when you are done copying it down, right?
Yes, sir.
The table and the pyramid, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. I want you to draw the pyramid about half page, right? You see why we would need that, because we'll be drawing other pyramids. So we want to compare it, right? And for this is an actual diagram that you would see in your test, and even probably up to Form 5, you would see it if you're doing integrated science, biology, or HSB, right?
So apparently, I didn't know that I went to the biology when I went to the country.
Yeah. And the thing about it is you would need the information that you would learn in Form 1 to 3 sciences would be a good foundation for general knowledge for people in general, right?